Okay, so I said today we would be getting into messing with server 3, adding another hard drive into it, because the next test out goes into storage. I think we'll start it next week. There's several ways that you can shut server 3 down. Virtualization would have a way to shut down the guest operating system, but I'm wanting to use server manager, so I'll go to server 1 and log into server 1 and use my server manager to control it. So when you log in, server manager should auto start, or should be an icon in the taskbar to launch it, or under the start menu. They've got it in lots of places for you to launch. So in other labs that we've been in here, we added server 1, 2, and 3 into servers 1's server manager. And you go to all servers, you should be able to see 1, 2, 3 in your list. And it makes it real easy. You can use server manager, and it looks like there's a restart of the server. I don't see a shutdown though. I thought there was a shutdown on the right click. So it was just restart. We don't need it to restart. We need it to power off so we can add in another drive to it. I could go to server 3 and log into it and run sconfig, and there's a number option to shut it down. I'm still wanting to do stuff remotely. So I'm going to right click my start menu and launch PowerShell as admin, or even command prompt as admin. It would work either way. Well, we had modified where we could get PowerShell going as admin. And I'm going to do a shutdown space /I for interactive. It's going to bring up a graphical dialog box. If I do shutdown space /I, and that way I can add in computer names that I want to shut down, like server 3, and I can specify what I want it to do: restart or shut down. I'll warn users for 1 second, and a lot of times servers need some type of reason that they're being shut down. Client operating systems typically don't, but it's always good to pick some reason that it's shutting down. And I'm going to go ahead and just pick anything in the drop down list. Quite a few times if you're trying to shut down a server and you don't give a reason, it won't actually take the shutdown command. So that's pretty easy to do, and this should remotely shut it down. So I'll just click OK and close down my PowerShell window, and I'm going to minimize my server 1 window. And I'm going to go look at server 3 out here, and I notice it went to off.
Did you put restart or shutdown?
Shutdown. I'm just going to right click on the server 3 and go down to settings. We have a SCSI controller in our list. I'm going to highlight it, and we can add components to the SCSI controller, like hard disk, CD-ROMs, or shared device. It's interesting. We're going to add a hard disk to it. I'm going to click Add. I'm going to add a virtual disk, We can either browse for an existing one or create new. We've not created one, so I'm going to click new. It'll bring our wizard up to create a new hard disk. These are dynamically expanding. We'll call this LAN 1 disk 2. It should be V drive, should show your location on these machines here. And you shouldn't have to make any change on that. So I'll go next. It's going to ask for the size. Let's make it 60. And then we just click finish. So the new hard disk is added and we just click OK. And then click the start, or right click and start the virtual machine. And then I go back to my server 1. Server manager has already detected it's been offline. I should be able to refresh once or 3 times and it should come back online. I got a red flag. Yes, automatic refresh failed. I know it failed. It was off. We turned it off. So, server 3 is back up and running. I've refreshed until that I got it said online in my server manager. Now we can manage it. So we added a new hard disk, right? So we should probably go configure that disk. To configure the disk, it'll be under File and Storage Services. Who would have thought storage services would mean hard disk? I click on disk here, let's see. A warning, server 3 has not been queried for data since it appeared offline. I may need to do another refresh on here because right now it's only showing us our 130 gig drive. So I'll refresh again. It shows us a new volume. I don't want to just jump in and start messing with that new volume. Microsoft has what they say the old way, the old disk manager, where you initialize a drive as the old master boot record or a GPT, the newer 4K sector size drives. So before you mess with this or do anything with it at all, let's talk about partitioning standards. Master boot record. Developed in the 80s. That's old. Nah. Okay, so 2 terabytes max. They can't handle drives over 2 terabytes in size. Do they make drives over 2 terabytes in size? Did they imagine they would make drives over 2 terabytes in size in the 80s? No. Drives were like 5 and 20 meg back then. I didn't even think about gigabytes yet. Well, they were starting to think about gigabyte, but terabytes was just like way out of the realm. So 2 terabytes max, 4 partitions max. They're 512 byte sectors. Sector 0 held the entire master boot record. So it's 512 bytes. That's not very much. So in 512 bytes, one single sector, they had to be able to like index the sectors for all the different partitions and what the active partition was, some boot code and stuff, actual code to boot an operating system in 512 bytes. So because the sector number, when you get past 2 terabytes, the number gets so big that you don't have enough bytes in here to store numbers in much bigger than that. So that's why you have the 2 terabyte limit, because you just run out of space in your little note card. You ever been able to get a note card and use it on the test? So the note card can be this size, and you can only write on the front of it. You can only put so much stuff on there, and then you run out of space. So that's sort of what they did. The test got so big. I mean, the test gets bigger than 2 terabytes. Like there's not enough space to write all the answers on. So GPT. Probably stands for something like Global Unique Identifier Partition Table, I think. I'm not certain, so I'm not going to write it down, but that's probably what it's. GUID, Global Unique Partition Table, something like that. Probably what that stands for. Not that old. I don't know exactly when it was exactly developed. In the 2000s, I guess. Greater than 2 terabyte drives. Basically unlimited partitions. Microsoft Utilities will only create 128 partitions on a GPT initialized drive. That's Microsoft's coding, though. That is not the GPT standard. It's not defined a set number of partitions that can be limited to. And drives have 4096 byte sectors. Almost all new drives you buy off the shelf, even if they're smaller than 2 terabyte, they use the new 4 kilobyte sector size. And Microsoft, too, with their modern operating systems, will automatically initialize them as the GPT partitioning. Especially if you had to do anything over 2 terabytes. Other OSs, depending on the version number, the release date and stuff, the default may be MBR. VMware used to initialize everything as MBR unless it was over 2 terabytes in size, then it would auto switch to GPT. Now it looks like they're initializing everything as GPT with their later versions. So not something to really concern yourself with unless you're installing a new drive or working with older operating systems. So right now, pretty much everything's going GPT. Cool, huh? That's what we deal with today. I remember way back in the 90s, the BIOS had issues. The actual BIOS chip itself would have issues seeing drives over 512 megabytes. And we had to put on like a master boot record overlay code that would try to load up before the operating system to see drives larger than 512 meg, so the OS could partition stuff. And that was fun. And then they kicked the bucket down the line till 2 gigabytes. 2 gigabytes was a problem because Microsoft couldn't format things over 2 gigabytes in size with FAT16. So I come with NTFS and FAT32 to go over 2 gigabytes in size. And they got past that hurdle. They hit another hurdle somewhere around 128 gigabyte in size BIOSes again. They had only kicked the bucket from like 512 meg to about 128 gigabytes. And then you come up and hit another BIOS limitation. And they kicked the bucket on past down to the 2 terabyte level. They were good for a while until they started making drives bigger than 2 terabytes. And like, well, now we can't partition them anymore past 2 terabyte levels. So I come up with GPT. Kick the bucket on down further. So crazy stuff. Microsoft has a way to deal with storage even beyond this here. They have something called storage pools. Their software storage subsystem, which kind of treats storage as a pool of hard disk. And this here, what I'm talking about, is taking an individual hard disk and partitioning it and configuring an individual hard disk. So Microsoft created a new subsystem for storage because you're running into big data where you're having to deal with petabyte-sized databases and stuff, and you need to be able to access huge chunks of storage. So they've got a new subsystem that links in drives almost like a RAID controller, a hardware RAID controller would, but they can link in different storage from, say, network attached storage devices, internally attached storage. So they can grab storage from several different locations across the network and put it into one huge pool and use a new software drivers and stuff to look at this one pool as one huge hard disk, but it actually may be spanning hundreds of disks across different devices. You can do some cool stuff. You can do something with the new storage pools. So one of the cool things about storage pools is, yeah, linking lots of drives. And data deduplication is really, really big. And we just keep on running into problems of every 2 years we double the amount of data that's ever been created in the world. It's an exponential curve. So we started creating data on hard drives back in the 50s. And it's been a pretty steady pace. The amount of data being generated by companies and stuff, storing on physical hard disk and stuff, has been doubling every 2 years. So from 2017 to 2019, we created the same amount of data that was created from 1950 to 2017. And following the same curve, it hasn't slowed down. In 2021, we'll have created all of the data, or as much new data as we've been able to create from 1950 to 2019 again. Most of it's videos and useless pictures and stuff on Instagram and YouTube and junk, but we're doing it. So data deduplication, plus we're also making copies and stuff. People are uploading the same videos and stuff to YouTube, so yeah, data deduplication is a big thing. It goes through and compares blocks of data. I believe it's 4 kilobyte chunks of data with each other, and if 2 blocks of data are the same, it deletes one of them and just makes a pointer to the original. So that's kind of cool. But it requires you to set up storage pools, and it requires you not to go in and format and partition your drive like you normally would. You have to pass to this new software subsystem that's only, I think, found under Server Manager, and link drives underneath it and use it to create the data pool and assign drive letters to it.
How much did you say the deduplication deletes at a time?
I believe it operates on 4 kilobyte chunks of data. So if there's any 2, 3, or 4 kilobyte chunks of data that are identical, it doesn't look at files. It doesn't see if 2 files are the same. It's looking at individual chunks of data. So it doesn't even care about files or file names or directory names on the system. It's just going through, and every 4K chunk it analyzes and see if there's another 4K chunk that's the same. I don't know if it does like an MD5 or SHA on them and figure out if they're identical or not and what type of comparison it does. But once it finds duplicate data, it removes duplicate blocks.
What would be an example of what it would look at and I guess I'm not understanding exactly how that works.
Well, your hard disk is just a bunch of zeros and ones strung together, and once it, there's some 2s in there. So it goes through and it looks at the first 4,096 or whatever. That's in K. So you have to multiply that.
So it's examining that binary.
Yep.
Right, looking at that.
I have a file server that we put lots of files and stuff on, and the last time I looked at it, the data deduplication savings was 468 gigabytes on the 2 terabyte drive. So different instructors and administrative assistants and stuff they can store stuff in folders and shares on the server, and it's found up to 4 gigabytes of duplicated data. That's a lot of space it saved. We're going to set that up. It's also, when you get into test out, like I said, we'll do it here, and it'll make test out probably a little bit easier to read and watching the videos and stuff and understand what they're doing. On server 1, I'm going to go into here, and instead of going ahead and doing anything with this disk here, I'm going to go under storage pools. So storage pool, primordial storage. You ever heard of like the primordial ooze that joined the amino acids together in the first single cell, and everything spawned from that? So that's where primordial, the building blocks of storage, is what that's called. So I'm going to go under task, and I'm going to create a new storage pool. So I'm going to go next. I'm going to give this pool a name. I'm going to name it Pool 1. That's really unique and crazy and out there, isn't it? Pool 1. Sounds pretty good to me. It's going to be managed by server 3. It's the only server that has an untouched disk, so that's the only one that's showing up. I automatically go, hey, it's only one out there. So we're going to go next again. Select storage that you want to add into the pool. So there may be multiple disks coming from that server 3 is attached to. We only added one, so there's just this one here. We'll just do automatic allocation, but say that you had 15 different disks that maybe either coming from the network or internal storage and stuff. You can mark some of them as hot spares, meaning they won't do anything unless one of the others fails. It'll be for redundancy purposes. So a hot spare means that somehow it's going to use some type of algorithm to create backups on multiple drives, and then if any one of those drives in the pool of disk, you can use the hot spare to replicate the new data to keep everything fault tolerant and redundant. We've only got one drive, so there's no fault tolerance we're going to play with. We're not going to get into that complexity. So I'm just going to leave automatic and hit next. And I'm going to click create. So it's basically building a database of all the hard drives and stuff that I've thrown into this pool. There's only one, so yes. Yours failed. So I'm looking at yours. Yours said access denied. So I just close it and probably just hit refresh at the top of the file server in the gray bar, the two arrows. Wait for it to refresh. You see this little bar running across after you hit refresh. And now try it again. Go to task. That's the wrong task, I think. Well, that's the new storage pool. Yeah, okay, that works too. Yeah, so go next and pool 1. And go next. And next again. And create. Yep. It just was a refresh issue. So once mine completed, they've got this nifty little checkbox down here. I can create a virtual disk when the wizard closes. So this almost the same way that if you were setting up a new server with a hardware RAID controller and you had to go into the BIOS of the RAID controller and tell it that you were either going to do a RAID 0 or a RAID 1 mirroring disk, RAID 5, something like that. You're linking all of those together into a specific RAID. That's kind of what we did in this first wizard. This next wizard is once you've linked all of those disks into some type of RAID configuration, specifying what's a hot spare, things like that, you create what's called a virtual disk on top of that. So you create like RAID 5, RAID 10, you may have like 50 terabytes. You may have linked a whole bunch of drives together. And you probably don't want to present 50 terabytes to a single operating system. You normally will break that huge chunk of storage spanning across maybe 32 physical drives up into smaller chunks that the operating system will see as hard drives. So that's what we're going to do next. We're creating this thing called virtual disk. If you're setting up a network attached storage appliance, they normally call it a LAN instead of a virtual disk. LUN. I don't know why they name them different. It's the same thing. It's like an alias, or what a LAN or virtual disk is the same thing. So I'm going to hit the little checkbox right there to create a virtual disk when I hit close. If you didn't do that, you could go under task and click new virtual disk if you missed that step. So not too hard. I don't know which task it is. There's 3 different task drop downs, but one of those you'd click on it and you would be able to find new virtual disk. So it wants us to select the pool that we want to create a virtual disk on. There's only one, the one we created. Now I'm going to hit OK. I'm going to go next. I'm going to give this virtual disk a name. VD1, Virtual Disk 1. Could also be an acronym for something else. I won't say it though.
Oh.
Military. If you're military, you've probably been lectured over VD, but Virtual Disk 1. You can ask the military people later if you're still confused.
Hold up, time out. I'll show you real quick.
So we'll name it that. We're not going to worry storage tiers. Storage tiers is if normally if you're attaching to network attached storage and you have really expensive $30,000, $100,000 NAS boxes and stuff, they will present storage and they will present storage normally in 3 different tier levels: gold, silver, and bronze, and they automatically determine the quality or the tiering level based on the drive types. Like SSD drives and a RAID array would be like gold. Plattered hard disk in a RAID array would probably be like silver, and then just regular disk, not in any type of redundancy, would be bronze level. So it'd actually present that, and you could, when you save data, you can say, hey, this needs to go on gold storage, this is test development stuff, it can go on bronze. Automatically place data where it needs to go. We're not going to get into that complexity, but that's what tiering means. So I'm going to go next. Enclosure awareness. We want to be aware of where the physical drives actually are located and try to keep redundancy replicated across 2 different physical NASs and stuff. And we've only got 1 disk. It's internal. It's a virtual disk at that. So we don't care about enclosure awareness. But yeah, if you were having external storage, you could enable that for it to communicate with like a Dell NAS or a HP Enterprise NAS box or something like that. So we're going to click next. What type of redundancy do we want across our drives? It's going to do simple because it's 1 disk. We can't mirror or stripe across it. Leaving out that complexity again, and I'm going to go next. I guess fixed provisioning would be okay. It's going to auto allocate the entire drive space. So next.
What's the difference in the thin and the thick? Because it seems like they're basically saying the same thing, they both go up to the volume side. So, why?
Yeah, in this case, don't really know why we would create thin provisioning in this case. I could see that for virtual machine disk files and stuff like that. I don't see why we'd want to do a thin provision size. I've never done thin provisioning, I don't think, on this system.
Well, what's the difference though?
I guess
The definitions look basically the same. It just says the volume unit space in the storage pool needed up to volume size, or a fixed says volume unit space in the storage pool equals the volume size.
I guess it doesn't actually use all of the space or reserve it on the disk. You could actually create another virtual disk, and they could slowly grow, but it just wouldn't automatically pre-allocate all the sectors for the virtual disk. But I'm going to go in this next part and just click maximum size button. We're just taking the whole space up. It gives us a summary here. We're creating a virtual disk across our 59 gig storage pool. It's a simple volume. We're not doing any type of redundancy. There's no enclosure awareness. So all the cool advanced stuff that you could have with you know, 6-figure price tag equipment, we're not dealing with.
What'd you put on the size?
I said max. If you're getting up into stuff that's costing 6 figures in external NAS storage, they'd probably ship you off to Dell EMC storage and go through training classes, and maybe even have their engineers come in and help set it up for you. 6 and 7 figure for storage, yeah, gets expensive. So I'm going to click create. So we just created what would be known as a virtual disk or whatever. It is what would be presented by, say, a RAID controller, or in this case, this software interface to the operating system. So this is what the operating system will see as a hard disk. We've done a lot of steps here just to get to the operating system to see this drive as a single disk. It's automatically checked here. Create a volume. So this is now being passed to the like the Windows 16 area, Windows 2016 server to format and create a volume on. So I'm going to close, and now this is what we're going to do to actually create a drive letter. So I had to go through 3 different things, and Mr. Lucas here is breaking stuff. Could not retrieve storage pool information. I don't know, click max and it won't let you hit next, will it?
Give me a next or create.
And it's scrolling across the screen. I don't know what yours is doing. I guess you can hit cancel and refresh and go through the wizard again. So yours was just running slow. I've seen that happen before. Just cancel out, refresh server manager, and redo it. So now we're creating a new volume. This is actually the drive letter stuff. So next, server 3 is highlighted. Disk 2, there's our virtual disk that we've got. So I'm going to make sure that's all highlighted and click next. How big? At this point in time, we could split this up into different partitions, like Linux. You know, Linux likes to have a swap partition, home partition, but we're not. We're just going to take the whole thing. It's already typed in there, 58.9 gig. So I'm going to go next. The drive letter.
My disk ain't showing.
Make sure you got server 3 highlighted if it's not showing. I guess we'll use drive letter E. We can, like Linux, mount it to a folder name. You could have an empty folder, create an empty folder under C drive, and then map it to that instead of a drive letter. So NTFS can act like the Linux OS and not deal with drive letters, or only have one, and link extra media in a folder. So if you're taking operating systems, you should have known we've mounted stuff under like /media or /mnt. If you wanted to access a CD-ROM or a thumb drive or something like that, you didn't deal with drive letters. And you can have enough different drives and pools out there that you run out of drive letters, and then you have to start mapping them to folder names.
What should the size was?
Just the max. It should already been typed in. So I'm going to just do drive letter E and hit next. What do we want to format it with? NTFS. This volume, I'm going to name it data. The Star Trek character. I'm going to go next. If you followed all the previous steps and got the data deduplication role service installed, you'll have an option to enable data deduplication here. And if this is not an option, that role service you skipped installing. We can get it set up later really easily, but hopefully everybody has data deduplication showing here. It's disabled by default. I want to go ahead and enable it as a general purpose file server. Any files, any data that's older than 3 days old, it'll start looking at. And it's figuring data less than 3 days old. You may still be working on it and making changes, and there's no reason to try to duplicate that, because if you're going to change it tomorrow, it's going to be different. And so it kind of gives a buffer here of how long do employees normally work on a project before they just like gets left. We have to set a schedule for it to run, so click the Set Deduplication Schedule. And you have to at least have one of them checked. Every day of the week, 1:45 a.m. looks good. You might want to make sure that that's, if you're running backups and stuff, you may want to put that as a couple hours off of when you run other major jobs. But that looks okay to me. I'm going to check there. And how long do you want it to run? Yeah, looks okay. I'll hit OK.
Does it work if you just hit OK, you don't have to apply?
Yep, you can hit apply or OK, either one, do the same. So if you don't set check one of those two check boxes there, or that top check box, it won't ever run. It looks like it would. Enable background optimization, regularly run data deduplication, low priority, blah blah blah. If you only had that checked, it will never run. I've tried it. We've let it sit for 3 weeks one time. It never deduplicated. And we never touched it. We put a couple hundred meg files on there and just let it sit. It never would deduplicate until one of these other two check boxes were checked. So just FYI, you do have to set the schedule.
If it's not set on the system and then you go in and set it to do that, will it go through everything that's previously been put on there, or
Yes.
will it just start from that point forward?
No, it'll look at all data that's over 3 days old. And so I'm going to hit create. When it refreshes everything, I click on pool 1, it's going to show me all the physical drives that are backing this that's in the pool, and it's going to show me all the virtual disks that we've created across that storage. Like I said, we've just did a 60 gig single drive, but you could actually have a large number of physical disks. I think 2019 server, you can link up to 256 physical drive our storage disk into it. I believe 2019 server goes up into the petabyte range that you can pull together. So we have storage now. We have an E drive. That's pretty complex than just going into the standard partitioning tool, and so initialize the disk and format, create a volume E drive on it and format it. There's like 3 different wizards we had to go through, but we get the benefit of being able to data deduplicate. You can't data deduplicate unless you use this storage pool feature. So if I click on volumes, I see my E drive, roughly 60 gig in size, and the data deduplication is 0. We have no savings. That's because it's empty. Of course there would be no savings. We got to put something on the drive for the data to deduplicate and crunch on. Got to wait at least 3 days. Our next class period is next Tuesday, so we should probably try to put some data on there. And then our next class period, we should come in and should have some percentage there. Okay, well, once you got storage, you can access your storage by creating shared folders on the server and then accessing that share across the network and uploading files to it. So if you click on shares, I see server 1 and server 2 out there. I don't see server 3. That's because server 3 doesn't have anything shared, so it doesn't show up. We don't have to see it out there to actually create a share on server 3. We can go under task and locate new share. And we can create an SMB share. SMB stands for Server Message Block. It's the file sharing protocol that Microsoft uses. It's actually an antiquated, unsecure, and a lot of hackers like SMB because there's like loopholes and backdoors and stuff into it. They've got a new one that's called CIFS. It's basically an encrypted version of SMB, signing and stuff. They still call it SMB here, but it's actually going to be able to use the newer encryption and stuff on it. So I'm just going to click the top option. You normally don't pick any of the other stuff. This down here, NFS, is for sharing with a Unix system. Network File Share Protocol, that's the Unix way to share folders out. Very similar to the way Microsoft does it, just the protocol works a little bit differently. I've also found that not to be stable on Windows. It lasts for 3, 5, 10 days, and then the NFS service has to be restarted because everybody loses connection to it. Not had that trouble on a Unix system or Linux, but on Windows, anytime I've done NFS, I've never found a version that was stable. So if I need that, I just set up a CentOS or another Linux distro and share using that protocol. I'm going to go next. I'm going to pick server 3 because server 1 and server 2 are domain controllers and you don't want to share anything off of a domain controller. That's why we put server 3 out here, so we could throw all the other stuff that Microsoft Networking utilizes. You also don't want to share stuff off of C drive, because if you fill that up, the server could crash. Event logs couldn't be stored anymore if C drive gets full. The operating system may not boot. Brings me back to the late 90s, early 2000s when Napster first came out. Somebody's working at a company, they downloaded Napster at the work computer, and they just said search for star, which is everything, and download it to their home folder on the server. Yeah, a couple hours the server hard drive filled up and crashed. There was no quotas or anything at that point in time, and the administrator didn't partition out the drive. He just had C drive and everything on one server, even web server and stuff like that. Point of sale system was all on this one system. It's like you just didn't set up your company correctly. And yeah, it crashed the server, cost them quite a bit of money in sales. The guy got fired. It's illegal to download music, anyway. Plus it cost the company 3 days of downtime. I blame the IT administrators. Like, God, my server wouldn't have been set up that way. So yeah, don't ever share or let users have access to the C drive because they will do stupid stuff like that. So I'm going to click E, and I'm going to click Next. So that's just kind of a keyword. Don't share anything off a domain controller, or don't share something off of C drive where the operating system is installed, have another drive. So us putting in a second drive had the benefit of teaching us how to use storage pools, how to format a drive, and also use it as a space to share things instead of off of C drive. If I only had one physical disk in my system, I would hope it would be like a terabyte or so drive, and I would create a partition of like 50 or 100 gig, install Windows on that, and then the other 900 gig, I'd partition that as a second drive letter. That way it would still be 2 drive letters, and it could not fill up C. Share name. Let's name it
Chapter 2.
for Stephen King, no, for information technology.
No, this chapter 1 or chapter 2?
What, in test out?
No,
Oh,
No,
it.
it.
So we'll name it IT. Some stuff down here, it shows that it's physically going to be on E drive, and it's going to create a subfolder called shares, and then a folder called IT. To access it from the network, your clients would have to do //server3, or also known as whack whack. The IT people in Little Rock call it whack whack server3 whack IT. I don't like the word whack. I like //server3 /IT, but apparently they think that takes too much to say. Whack whack is like faster for them to say, less energy. Like, you're that lazy? Come on. So that right there is our remote path. You could copy it, paste it in File Explorer to search menu, whatever if you wanted to, but I'm going to just manually type that later. So I'm going to go next. I normally do that. Unless it's a folder that only one person has access to, I normally don't allow caching of the share, because you can have issues. They could cache the data, go home, make some changes on stuff that's on their hard drive that's cached, and when they bring it back in, plug it back into the network, it'll upload the changes up to the shared folder. And what if somebody else also did the same thing to the same file, which you can get some trouble with that. So I'll normally uncheck that part. I like to encrypt data access. If you're still running Windows 7 clients around, you may have trouble with that. If they don't have all the latest patches and stuff enabled to do the encrypted data transfer on a share. So if you're having any legacy clients, you may have trouble with the encrypt data access. They would be denied access to the share. I enabled that security, and it ran pretty good for a couple months, and then a new person joined in, and their computer is still running Windows 7, and it wasn't fully patched, so I had to uncheck it because they couldn't have access to it. But it's good. If you can encrypt everything in motion, that prevents any type of code injection, file stealing, or anything like that across the network. If you can encrypt the data stream. So I'll go next. Permissions. I'm going to customize. I'm not going to cover the NTFS permissions right now, because this is where you'd specify what users and stuff would need access, or what users wouldn't have access to it. Not going to worry with that. It's there's enough permissions here where we can remotely put files on there. We're admins. We got full control. Over on this share, though, I will cover share. Share has one set of permissions, and for 99.9% of the time, you have one set of permissions you set under share. 0.01% of the time, you would have some other set of permissions here. So that's why I'm going to go over this one. Everyone right now has full control. That's normally bad. You want to edit that and take off full control checkbox and hit OK. And that gives them the ability to change and read. It pretty much gives everybody full control to everything, except this allows users the ability to access the permissions tab. It makes something known as mandatory access control. Meaning you, the administrators, you're the one that control what permissions files get when they're created, and you don't want users screwing with it. If they have full control, then they could go in, if they've created a file, they could get to the permissions tab and change permissions up whatever they want on their files that they created. So, just taking away the full control, that solves that problem. But you as the administrator, you need to get to the permissions tab, so you need to add, click select a principal name, and most of the time you're going to have to click on locations and click on the file server name and hit OK. And type in administrators. Plural. I think I spelled that wrong. Yeah, got to spell administrators completely out and hit check name, and it should put the file server's name / administrators on there. To do what?
To get into that menu, how did you?
To get this dialog box, you mean? I clicked on new and then I clicked select principal. And then I changed the location. The administrators is actually a local account on server 3, but since it's a member of Contoso.com, it automatically gets some domain membership. It automatically gets the Contoso's administrator group added into it. And the local server 3 administrator account is also added into administrators. So that's why I use this group. Whether you log in locally to server 3 as a local admin or a domain admin or whatever, you'd have full rights to this. So I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to check full control. And I'm going to hit OK. So anytime you look at the Share tab, you should always see the double faces here. Everyone should always have change, and the administrators should have full control. If you were to see a single face, you knew that you got it wrong. That would be just the local administrator account. That means you forgot to put the S on the end of administrator. You picked the user account instead of a group. With permissions, rarely do you ever want to see a single face on there. You want to deal with groups. Trying to deal with individual users gets really complicated, especially when they quit the company, somebody else comes in, they need rights to the stuff they created. It's really, really bad to ever see a single face, typically. I'm going to go ahead and remove that. You shouldn't see something like that. You should see the two faces. I just wanted to show you what, if you've seen a single face, what it would look like, and that you could visually glance and go, I did something wrong there. There's just only one single person there. So I should see the double face icon. So everyone administrators, change for everyone, full control for administrators. So you almost like take a screenshot of that. And the only thing that would change from you going out and doing this at somebody else's company or on another server, it would be the server name right here. That right there would be the only thing that should be different. So if you took a picture of this whole thing, this server 3, of course the the name of the server up here and stuff would be, the share name would be different. As far as permission goes down here, the allow should be there, everyone, administrators, change, full control, all that. You should see that on the share tab.
How do we move that administrators server 3 over? I missed that one. I got the single place one.
Let me look at yours. What do you have?
Single.
Okay, yeah, share tab. So you have everyone and it's changed. You click add. Select principal name. Change the location to server 3. And hit OK. And then type administrators.
Or just administrators?
Yep. And then hit check name. And then hit OK. And then click full control. And OK again. I think I finally got, I need to quiz my LAN 2 people. I hadn't created a, well yeah, we've created some shares. I need to quiz them though, just to see if they'll do it right. I always have people try to change or do something different here. I'll get instructions that we need to, everybody should have read only to here. They'll try to do it under here instead of the permissions tab. This is where you actually lock people down. And that's like just the parking lot of your business. You don't want to block the parking lot of your business. You might want to block people from coming in and buying liquor if they're under 21 from your business, but you don't want to stop them from, you know, being able to stop everybody from parking in your parking lot. Nobody can even come in. So that's what the share is. It's like like the parking lot of a business. If you lock it down, they can't even get the actual rights they're supposed to get if you lock it down. Okay, let's hit OK, or apply. We'll hit OK. We'll hit next, and we will hit create. And we will hit close. So now in my server manager, I see the shares out there. I could right click and open share. That's a really quick way. I don't want to do that. That's cheating. Not really. It's part of Windows. I'm going to go to File Explorer. It's typically the way that I access shares on servers. I'll type in 2 backslashes, the server name, and I'll hit enter. So, or whack whack server 3. Hit enter. It connects into server 3, shows all of the shares and shared printers and stuff that might possibly be on that server. We've only got the one recreated. So I'll double click on it. It's blank. We need to put some data out there, so I'm going to go right click and go to new text document, and I'm going to type in big file and hit enter. This big file is 0 kilobytes in size. We gotta put data in here. So I'm going to double click this big file, and I'm just going to hold down the F key for a little while. And then let go. So after it, you see the scroll bar down here got about halfway across the screen or so.
Mine did not do well with
Yeah, mine said network error, you can't access the file.
So let's try. So let me see you type in \/ server 3 up there.
that. Backslash server 3.
Yep. And hit enter. And then you double click IT.
I guess I put space.
Yep, spaces. You can't have spaces in the file or in the server, computer name, file path, or anything. Yep. Okay, so once I've got a string of F's up there, I'm going to use a keyboard shortcut. I'm going to hold down the Control key and tap the letter A. That selects all. Control A selects all.
How did you get to that? Is it
Click
just
on
like
the
that?
file. Yeah.
Yeah.
Or maybe text message.
Yeah, right click new text document, open it up, hold down the F key till it makes a really long line. Then Control A, that's a select all. See how it turned it all blue? Now I'm going to hold down the Control key again, and I'm going to tap the letter C on the keyboard. That's for copy. I didn't see anything change on the screen, but I held down Control key and tapped the letter C and released everything. And I'm going to hold down the Control key again, and I'm just going to hold down the V key, and that will start pasting. Actually, I think that's just making big long lines instead of making multiple lines, but whatever. I held it down for a while. It would take a long time to make any file of any huge size, so I've held it down 15 seconds or so and let go. You've seen it started adding stuff. I'm going to do Control A again and grab a bigger block and then do Control C. So now I've just got a whole bunch of F's, and I guess I'll just hit enter and make a new line. And then I'll hit Control and V and hold it down for a while. And now I'll see the scroll on the side over there starts getting bouncing around on the right side of the screen. And then you let go, and
Yeah, mine's still trying to catch up.
you wait on it for a while. And I'm going to save all of that. I'm going to file, save, and I'm going to see just how big it made the file. It made it 4 meg. That's not a big file yet. So I know it's 4 meg. So I'm going to do Control A again. And Control C. So I've got 4 meg in my buffer. So I'm going to hit Control and start tapping V. So there's 8, 12, 16, 20. That should be about 20 meg right there. I'm going to hit Control A again and Control C to copy that 20 meg of data. And guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to hit enter again and make a new line. Hold down Control key, and that's going to be 40, 60, 80, 100. So it should be about 100 meg, 90 to 100 meg file. I'm going to go and save this. And it ended up only being 80 gigs. Somehow I added stuff wrong there. So I got an 80 gig file. So that's pretty cool. We're wanting somewhere between, I'm going to try to make it 100. As close to 100 as I can. So I'm going to hit Control V one more time. And save it, see if that added.
Mine just said not enough memory available to complete this operation.
Ah, you got too big. So there, I was wanting about 100 meg. You get into the gig size, you run out of RAM. Yeah, true.
649.
So that's what I was going for, is a file about 100 meg in size. What I'm going to do, I'm going to copy this file, and then I'm just going to use Control V again on the keyboard to paste that file, and it's going to make a copy of it, and another copy, and another copy. 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm going to make about 10 copies, so we'll have about a gig of junk in the folder. That way data deduplication has something to do. We'll see how much duplicate data it can find and see how much it can crunch that down. See how good the algorithm is. But you can see it's all just F's, right? And we have 10 files of the same size, so it should be able to find a lot of duplicate data and shrink that up pretty well on the system. So we're getting close to, we're at the end of class. I'm going to go look at my volume real quick and do a refresh here. So my capacity was 58.9 gig, and I have 58 gig free because I created about a gigabyte worth of just random data. Oh, I refreshed, 57. So I've got 3.2% of the drive has been used with just useless stuff. So I think it's time to go to lunch, and when we come back on Tuesday, that data will be over 3 days old, and our data duplication should have worked, and we should have some savings. So I'm going to leave all my systems up and running, and we should have savings.
Mine's still been shut down, so I don't know how big my file was when I fixed it.